The Florida Historical Society presents Florida Frontiers is made possible in part by the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund and by
The historic Rossiter House Museum and Gardens is in the O'Galley section of Melbourne, Florida. Preserved as it was in the early 20th century, historic tours of the Rossiter House include antiques, artifacts, and family heirlooms, and the 1865 Houston Family Cemetery. The last resident of the home was successful businesswoman and philanthropist Caroline P. Rossiter. The historic Rossiter House Museum and Gardens is available for weddings and other special events.
the Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs, the Florida Council of Arts and Culture, and the state of Florida. English composer Frederick Delius depicts musically 19th century life on the St. Johns River in his orchestral work, The Florida Suite. Delius's father wanted him to be a businessman instead of a composer, so he sent his son to Florida to manage an orange grove near Jacksonville. This is the Florida home where Frederick Delius lived in the mid-1880s. In 1961, the Delius house was moved from Solano Grove on the St. Johns River to Jacksonville University. Welcome to Florida Frontiers, presented by the Florida Historical Society. I'm Ben Brotmarkle. Delius wasn't very successful at running the citrus grove on his property, but it was his time here that inspired him to compose the Florida Suite.
He was very inspired by the landscape. He was very inspired by the nature of the grove and of the river. So a lot of his compositions reflect that image we have of the sunset through the trees on the St. Johns, the birds in the trees, bird sounds, a lot of images of water in his music that you sense he's writing about water or on the water.
He looked at the scenery, he listened to the workers, who were mostly Afro-American, sing in the fields and also occasionally dance at night and just have fun. This shows up in the Florida Suite.
One of his operas, Kawanga, which we have the original score of in our archive here at Jacksonville University, was written with those storylines in mind and inspired that work. And a lot of his music has rhythmic elements that gets at the traditions of that music.
The 22-year-old Frederick Delius received some of his earliest musical training in Jacksonville.
Thomas Ward was a church organist in Jacksonville. And evidently, he was well grounded in music theory and composition.
After leaving Florida in 1886, Delius continued studying music in Germany and France. He was influenced by composers including Richard Wagner, Claude Debussy, and his friend Edvard Grieg. Like Grieg, Delius continued to be inspired by folk music and nature.
And he would ask Grieg advice on his compositions. He would send him manuscripts and have him give him feedback. He was particularly close to Grieg in that way. Percy Grainger was another influence. Wagner to an extent, but the Impressionists He wasn't personally in contact with Impressionist composers, but his compositions during that time let us know that he was aware of those composers, Debussy, Fauré, Ravel.
He has always been attracted by nature. On hearing the first cuckoo in spring, and also the common folk. I'm thinking of the Dance Rhapsody and Brig Fair, Over the Hills and Far Away. Those pieces are typical Delius.
His compositions vary in style from his early to his late. He definitely is more romantic early, and then as the compositions progress into the 20th century, he becomes a little more impressionistic and even chromatic. But yes, those elements of Florida and the writing that he did here in Florida never left. And you can see that throughout his work.
The small 4-bedroom house where Delius lived in the mid-1880s was originally located about 35 miles south of Jacksonville in Solano Grove. It sat abandoned for years but was rediscovered in 1939. The home was relocated to Jacksonville University in 1961 and moved to its current location on campus in the 1990s. A square piano that belonged to Delius is inside the home.
Jacksonville University's tried its best to take care of it, and it's an old house, and it needs a lot of tender loving care, and we're very proud of it, actually. We've had people from England come to visit it a number of times. It's a well-known destination for Delius researchers. People are interested in early American music, composition, certainly people interested in Frederick Delius's early life. But we've had a number of scholars come and take a look at it and walk around and take pictures, and every time they do that, it just always fills me with pride to know that people internationally are very interested in this house.
Composer Frederick Delius was inspired by the African-American music he heard while living in this house. Jacksonville had a thriving African-American community in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. People who lived here during that time include writer and anthropologist Zora Neale Hurston, educator and activist Harry T. Moore, and author and poet James Weldon Johnson. Together with his brother John Rosamond Johnson, James Weldon Johnson wrote what is called the Black National Anthem, the song "Lift Every Voice and Sing." This is the Jacksonville Children's Chorus with the Morehouse College Glee Club under the direction of Darren Daly. James Weldon Johnson was born in Jacksonville in 1871, and his brother John Rosamond Johnson followed 2 years later. James wrote the lyrics to Lift Every Voice and Sing as a poem in 1900 to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's birthday. 5 years later, John set the poem to music.
What the beauty of that song, the beauty and the sadness of the song, it really is a timeline of what enslaved Africans and free blacks experienced here in America. So it was of acknowledging the pain and the suffering, but the still moving forward, and then the hope of things being better.
The Ritz Theater and Museum in Jacksonville displays documents, artifacts, and memorabilia associated with the song Lift Every Voice and Sing. Animatronic robots bring James Weldon Johnson and John Rosamond Johnson to life, voiced by actors Ossie Davis and Harry Burney.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring.
Lift every voice and sing. I composed those words in 1900, pacing our front porch while Rosalind worked on his musical setting. We wrote the song to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's birthday, to be sung by a chorus of 500 school children. We did not imagine then that the children of Jacksonville would keep singing the song, teaching it to others, until it was being sung in schools and churches throughout the South and elsewhere.
Let us sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Jim, your words are magnificent. I only hope my music does them justice.
Rosamond, your 6 years at the New England Conservatory have paid off admirably.
As did your years at Atlanta University.
Yes, in many ways. They opened my eyes to a much larger world, including some of its injustices.
James Weldon Johnson was principal of the Stanton School in Jacksonville. He was a writer during the Harlem Renaissance in New York, served as an ambassador under President Theodore Roosevelt, became a leader of the NAACP, and was a civil rights activist and attorney. John Rosamond Johnson was a successful composer of Broadway shows with Bob Cole, also writing operettas and vaudeville songs. He toured around the world with America's first black opera company. Even with all of those accomplishments, the Johnson brothers' most lasting legacy is the song Lift Every Voice and Sing.
It is about admitting that you're in a tight spot, but let's keep moving. It can be better. We can't stop. But if we move forward, it can be a better opportunity if we make it, if we just keep going. And so it was still true to what was happening in the civil rights movement. I think it's still true now to what is happening here in America and other countries where people's human rights are being violated. And it's a timeless piece.
Florida artist Augusta Savage created a 16-foot-tall sculpture for the 1939 World's Fair in New York that was inspired by the song Lift Every Voice and Sing. The sculpture was done in plaster because Savage could not afford bronze. After the World's Fair, the large artwork was destroyed. Some smaller souvenir versions of the work survive, and one is on display at the Ritz Theater and Museum.
It's unfortunate that she did not enjoy financially her gifts, but her determination and her grit and her desire to share her knowledge. She influenced Jacob Lawrence and Romare Bearden, so other artists who did have an opportunity to enjoy their acclaim before they left this earth. So she was ahead of her time, and the Johnson brothers and Augusta Savage and Zora Neale Hurston all had lived here at one point, and they were all in New York at the same time. And so she was inspired when she was given the opportunity to do a piece for the New York World's Fair, and I believe she was one of the first, if not the first, black artist to have that opportunity. She chose to create a piece called Lift Every Voice and Sing. We affectionately call it the harp, but the song is definitely the inspiration behind the harp.
In 1919, the NAACP named Lift Every Voice and Sing the Negro National Hymn. As the song became even more popular during the civil rights movement of the 1960s, it became known as the Black National Anthem. The song still resonates with people around the world.
There were two ladies from the Netherlands, barely could speak English. I showed them this exhibit. In fact, I mentioned I'm going to show you Lift Every Voice and Sing, and they sung it to me in Dutch. They could say hello, how are you, but when I said lift every voice, they sung it, and they sung it like they were like this, and they just was so happy, and they sung the whole thing. So it's amazing how people are touched by this song. And I share with students, I said this is a song. Just think how 120 years later now, people are still touched by this song. What are you going to do that is going to touch people almost 120 years later after you're gone? What song, poem, book are you going to write? What are you going to do that people are going to remember you and just get inspired by what you did?
A train called the Orange Blossom Special inspired a song that has become a part of Jacksonville history. The luxury train Orange Blossom Special traveled from New York City to towns throughout Florida from the 1920s to the 1950s. Legend has it that when the train stopped in Jacksonville during an exhibition tour, Chubby Wise and Irvin T. Rouse wrote the song Orange Blossom Special.
The Orange Blossom Special had been running between New York and Miami since the 20s, but in 1938 they introduced a diesel streamlined version, which had a diesel engine instead of a steam engine, and very aerodynamic design, and was a beautiful train. And they decided to show it off by taking it on an exhibition tour that went all the way down the East Coast from Washington, D.C. to Miami, and stopped in every town of any size along the way. And wherever it stopped, it drew thousands of people who would come just tour it and see this technological marvel. And it arrived in Jacksonville on November 7th, 1938. And schools let out. It stopped at the railroad station, which is now the Prime Osborne Convention Center in Jacksonville. And it was estimated that 10,000 people during the day that it was there went through the train. And among the people who went through were Chubby Wise, who was a fiddler who lived in Jacksonville, and his friend Irvin Rouse, who was also a fiddler who lived in Miami but was visiting. The way Chubby told the story is after visiting the train, they were so impressed that after visiting a few bars, they went home to Chubby's apartment and in about a half an hour wrote the song Orange Blossom Special. And Chubby recalls that Irvin said, "Chubby, we really need to copyright this thing because this could really be a big song." And Chubby said, "I don't have time for that. I've got kids to support. I got a cab to drive in about 3 hours. If you can do anything with the song, it's all yours." And he said, "That was the biggest mistake I ever made. I should have copyrighted that song as co-author." And the fact is that the song had already been written by November 7th, 1938. It was copyrighted in October of 1938 solely by Irvin T. Rouse. So Chubby's story could not have been true that they wrote it spontaneously after visiting the train on November 7th. It had already been written.
The story of Jacksonville being the birthplace of the song Orange Blossom Special is so entrenched that it's become part of the city's musical history.
It just makes you feel good. It makes you want to dance. It makes you want to stand up and yell. Musicians love it because it's very improvisational. It's like jazz. You can sort of recognize the core tune when people play it, but everybody plays it a little bit differently.
This is the Jacksonville Symphony performing a new work called Bridges by composer-in-residence Courtney Bryan. The piece is meant to evoke the history of Northeast Florida with different instruments representing different cultural groups. The Jacksonville Symphony has become a part of Jacksonville history, organizing in 1949 and giving their first performance in 1950.
So back then the orchestra was not a full-time thing. It was musicians who played together for fun. Money only came in much later. But we can look at a couple of major milestones. 1972 was the commission of celebration by Duke Ellington celebrating 150 years of the city. And we can hear what the orchestra sounded like at that time. And then we move forward to 1997 when Jacoby Symphony Hall was built. And for the first time, the orchestra really had a concert hall that was its own.
In the decades prior to Jacoby Symphony Hall being built, the Jacksonville Symphony performed in various venues, including the George Washington Hotel Auditorium, the Florida Theater, and the Duval County Armory. After its 1972 premiere, the Duke Ellington piece Celebration was forgotten and only recently rediscovered.
During the preparations for Hurricane Irma, we had to empty the library in case it flooded. And when our librarian, Bart Dunn, was putting everything back into the library, he found this score, and we didn't know that it existed.
In 1972, Duke Ellington attended the premiere of his work celebrating the 150th anniversary of the founding of Jacksonville.
Well, Ellington describes it himself, and there's a recording of him at the concert, and he describes Jacksonville as a young girl who's meeting her suitor, and off they go into town and they meet their friends. It's very kind of big band, light classic kind of style. A lot of use of the brass instruments. A lot of very 70s sounding violin melodies, sliding all over the place. Very much of its time, but absolutely charming.
Ladies and gentlemen, Duke Ellington.
Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen, for such a wonderful, warm welcome. You're very beautiful, very sweet, very gracious, very generous. And of course, I do love you madly. I'm very, very grateful for this privilege. I'm indebted to my good friend, Maestro Willis Page, our gracious host, and the opportunity to be here on the occasion of the birthday party of this beautiful little girl on her 150th birthday.
In 2019, Courtney Bryan introduced her new work composed for the Jacksonville Symphony.
So Bridges, the title of the piece, so bridges are seen as something that can separate people, and in a city as large as Jacksonville, I've learned from many of you just, how the bridges can do that, and also I've experienced just by the driving the distance, but bridges also can bring people together, so the idea is that through music, the bridges symbolize people coming together.
The Jacksonville Symphony is more active than ever, keeping musical traditions alive. Since 1979, Jacksonville has hosted an annual jazz festival. Southern rock bands, the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner, got started here, building on the legacy of the historic sounds of Jacksonville. You've been watching Florida Frontiers, presented by the Florida Historical Society. Visit us anytime on the web at myfloridahistory.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Brotmarkle. The Florida Historical Society presents Florida Frontiers is made possible in part by the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund and by
The historic Rossiter House Museum and Gardens is in the O'Galley section of Melbourne, Florida. Preserved as it was in the early 20th century, historic tours of the Rossiter House include antiques, artifacts, and family heirlooms, and the 1865 Houston Family Cemetery. The last resident of the home was successful businesswoman and philanthropist Caroline P. Rossiter. The historic Rossiter House Museum and Gardens is available for weddings and other special events.
The Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs, the Florida Council of Arts and Culture, and the state of Florida.